Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the March 19th, 2025 briefing. And we're actually having a briefing for the board meeting on May the 22nd, this Thursday. And I know our other two members will be here shortly. We do have a closed session afterwards today, and we have no discussion items. And I'm happy to turn the meeting over to our county manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner, staff, and guests. Before we go into our agenda items, I'm going to ask Kyle Haney to introduce our Animal Shelter Director.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Jamie Bertman, who started as our new Animal Shelter Director back on April 14th. Ms. Bertman was formerly employed by Forsyth Humane Society for over 12 years, started as their volunteer coordinator, worked up to a shelter manager, and fun fact, she actually managed the county shelter when we had a contract with Forsyth Humane. And so since she's been here, I've gotten a lot of congratulations and from a wide swath of the community, just espousing their appreciation for Ms. Bertman's knowledge of animal shelters, and certainly have been impressed with her work. Has come into a situation with some notable challenges and has really stabilized and provided leadership in that space. So we are very happy to have her on board.
That's good. Would you like to say anything? You don't have to, but
Would you like me to?
it's up to you.
Well, I just want you to know I really am your hometown gal. I was raised in Winston-Salem, went away for college, and came back quickly because Winston-Salem really is a great place to work and live, and I am really excited to serve our community in this way. So it's been an honor. I've been there 5 weeks and been working diligently with the Sheriff's Department to keep our community safe, and also with the existing staff, who is truly incredible. So it's been an honor. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
It's good. Well, welcome.
Thank
Glad
you.
you're here.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate Kyle bringing you over. We've all said we need to see this person.
It's me. Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to ask you a quick question.
Certainly.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Have you had an opportunity to look at your budgets this year? And do you have any recommendations or some feedback to the commissioners about the animal services?
Yeah, so I've been able to partner with Kyle and Kim. They really did see me as the industry expert, which was very flattering. And what they are proposing seems very appropriate for what I need.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, they put together a great budget for me.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, agenda item number 1 is a public hearing on the zoning petition of Tanya Hardy and Leslie Hardy Hadley from AG to RM5S. Chris Murphy, our planning director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the Commission. This is the second briefing on this item since it is a public hearing. As the manager did state, this is a zoning petition of Tanya and Leslie Hardy to rezone approximately 28 acres of property located on the east side of Hastings Road between I-74 and High Point Road from AG to RM5S, multifamily townhome, 5 units per acre. This is a subject property shown on the county-wide growth management area plan out of Legacy. The subject property is located within GMA 3. Again, you do see the location, again, just on the north of 311 I-74, in between it and High Point Road, there in the Union Cross, Wahlberg Road area. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, it is almost 28 acres of property, and it is located along the east side of Hastings Road. You see that it is located near other zoning districts. You have ag, you have RM8S, which is the Weatherstone project that was approved back in 2003, and that is a mixed-use PRD with townhomes and single-family homes. So you have townhomes and single-family homes in the area through a comprehensively planned and approved project. The IP zoning is the Union Cross Elementary School. Again, you have some other zoning districts, RS12S, RS20, GIS. There are lots of various zoning districts in the area, and that will prove important because you do see in your packet there was a spot zoning opinion that was rendered by the county attorney that if this were challenged, it would not, more than likely not be construed as spot zoning were this project to be approved. Subject property outlined, the subject property boundaries on the countywide aerial imagery. Again, east side of Hastings Road, it is an area that has predominantly been agricultural. It was a tobacco farm for a number of years. Again, you do see the Union Cross Elementary School here. You see the North Carolina Leadership Academy, which is a K through 12 school that was built within the last decade. And you also have a large-scale church just to the southeast. This is a subject property shown on the southeast Forsyth County Area Plan Update, which was approved in 2014. It does show the subject property for large lot residential, and I want to explain that a little bit. I did mention the Weatherstone project, which was approved in I said 2003. It was approved in 2004. The Union Cross Southeast Forsyth County Area Plan was approved in 2004. The subject property was recommended for large lot residential because it was not believed at that time that that property could be served by public sewer. When the Weatherstone project was approved and public sewer was installed, there is a manhole along High Point Road that is all of this Weatherstone project drains to this manhole and then proceeds west and gets treated back at the wastewater treatment plant further in Winston-Salem. It was not known that these properties, or at least this property, could be served via that manhole. So since there wasn't public sewer available, it was a large lot residential recommendation. It is located within GMA 3. GMA 3 and Legacy, whenever it is served by public sewer, the appropriate density is 0 to 8 units per acre. Single family, but 0 to 8 units per acre. So again, if this plan were redone, and when this plan is redone, it will be reflective that this can be served by public sewer and should have had a more intense recommendation in the area plan. A few sites photos. This is looking north along Hastings Road. The subject property is to the right. In the background, you can see Union Cross Elementary up at the corner of High Point Road and Hastings Road. This is looking east into the subject property from Hastings Road. Again, large agricultural area. If you can go look at some of the old Google Street Maps, you can actually see tobacco plants in this field. Of course, I don't think it has been in cultivation for a few years, but again, this is looking into that subject property. This is looking south on Hastings Road. Subject property is to the left. This is looking west from the subject property across Hastings Road. This is the site plan. The north is to the right on this image. So you would have to rotate this to get a true north. Union Cross Elementary School is up in this area. This is Hastings Road. This is I-74. 2 access points onto Hastings Road. 138 townhomes. There is a central green area where mail kiosk, overflow parking, and a recreation area is included. Here are the proposed elevations of the townhomes. I do want to go back briefly to this image. Whenever we are, I will get into some of the concerns that were voiced by the opposition to this project whenever it went to the planning board. One of the main thrusts of opposition is traffic. There is, as is the case with most schools, there is a lot of traffic in morning drop-off and afternoon pickup associated with Union Cross Elementary School. If you look at Hastings Road in and of itself, the only traffic count that we have on Hastings Road is there's a traffic count approximately in this area right here. As of 2023, there were 400 trips a day that traveled on Hastings Road in like south of 74. Obviously, we have no traffic count up here around the school, and I'm sure there is, again, substantial afternoon and morning school traffic issues, but that's an existing situation, and this project is not going to contribute to that. That is going to be there regardless of approval of this project. I did want to just point that out again and kind of cover that, as that will be a key point of contention from the opposition on this case. As I did mention earlier, as the site lies within GMA 3 and will have access to public water and sewer, the request is consistent with the general recommendation of Legacy 2030 to allow residential development at a density of 0 to 8 units per acre within the utility serviceable land area. So again, 0 to 8 units per acre is appropriate. More than likely, this would have been recommended for single-family residential and not townhome, but again, the density is consistent with Legacy when you consider that it is sewered. The request is also consistent with the recommendations of Legacy 2030 to provide a variety of housing types within the serviceable area. This request would allow for needed housing units in proximity to an activity center and near an existing public school. The request would allow for residential development in a growing area near major employers. Again, this is near Union Cross Industrial Area, which is one of the areas of focus for job and economic development within the county. It's also near the heart of the Triad, which has the same focus through a 3 or 4 county area. This was heard by the Planning Board at their April 10th, 2025 public hearing. There was significant opposition in the audience, but they had elected one spokesperson to speak. The opposition primarily had concerns related to traffic at High Point Road and Hastings Road, the increase in density, the use of townhomes, the inconsistency with the adopted area plan, and the lack of an identified need for the project. Following the public hearing, the Planning Board did vote 5-1 to recommend approval of this request to the commissioners. And with that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris?
Just one confirmation.
All right, finally got it right.
Your analysis of conformity plans and planning issues explains why you think, why it's staff's opinion, I presume, that the small area plan should be updated. But it does say, does it not, that the proposed use is inconsistent with the Southeast Forsyth County area plan update, land use recommendation for large lot residential development at this location. Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
that is true.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
Agenda item number 2 is a resolution recognizing May 18th through 24th as Emergency Medical Services Week, and we will have staff to receive that on Thursday. Agenda item number 3 is approval of minutes for the meeting of May 8th, and those have been emailed to you. Agenda item number 4 through 6 are all for our CFO. Oh, maybe not. Okay, maybe. Okay. 4 through 6 is going to be a tag team between Kim Bussey in budget and Terry Goodman, our CFO. I'll introduce number 4, which is an adoption of the County Capital Projects Ordinance and adoption of the Education Capital Projects Ordinance.
Thank you, Chantel. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yes, our CFO, Terry Goodman, and I have been working hard on this item, and so I'll help start things off by talking about the bigger picture and how it relates to our capital improvement program that you heard about last week, and then let Terry really dive into the subsequent item and some of the specifics. So the purpose of this initial item is to establish a new county capital improvements, or excuse me, a new county capital projects ordinance and a new education capital projects ordinance. This year, you've seen a transition towards a new approach to capital budgeting, and instead of identifying funding sources on the front end, like our PAYGO or our 2/3 bonds maintenance funding sources, we began work to show you a project-driven, needs-based capital improvement plan And part of the work for that new strategy also includes changing the way we are accounting for our capital projects. So just as the CIP is sort of moving towards a new project-driven approach, so too is the accounting structure. And that's really what this item is all about. So historically, you've seen capital project ordinance, the CPOs, come to you for adoption based on the funding structure. You've seen a 23 CPO come to you for approval, or a 2020 PAYGO CPO. You've seen a 2020 Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, 2/3 maintenance CPO. They've been very specific to the funding source. And if there are projects that might have multiple funding sources, this has or can make tracking these projects and management of these projects a little more difficult. So as we have our new financial system in place, and we have our new approach to capital budgeting in place, part of the work, again, is really consolidating all of our existing CPOs into one. And so this item, again, will establish the one for county and one for education, and then Terry's going to help us identify and move all of those other CPOs into this one larger structure. And one final thing I want to mention before I turn it over to Terry and take any questions is that to connect this to our conversation last Thursday, you might remember that we identified this 2.651 in new and additional funding sources for these new critical capital projects, with the proposal of 1.546 in county project reserves and the GEO bond premium and 1.105. And so I just wanted to point out that this initial item to set up the new CPO identifies those funding sources. And you see that highlighted there, that 2.66 million. That is that amount plus a little buffer, about $14,000 of county capital project reserves as well, just in case that bond premium comes in a little lower than expected. And I think we'll know that amount on Thursday. But I just want to point out how that connects to the CIP that you've been seeing last week. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this initial new adoption of the CPO for county and education, or I can turn it over to Ms. Goodman.
Any questions for Kim? Let's make one comment. I think combining all the, it was very, I mean, we don't deal with the day-to-day issues. It was just very difficult to even follow all those different titles and movements. And then there would be surpluses left in one account, and then that surplus had to be collected together and moved to different accounts or into a different project. And it was very confusing. And to put those into a single, the structure, I think it will be much easier for everyone to follow, use, keep track of, et cetera. So, thank you.
We hope that's the case, yes.
Terry, if you want to, yeah, you can go ahead and introduce 5 and 6 because I know they're all interrelated.
They are. The only other thing I will add to what Kim just briefed is with the adoption of the county, we're calling it like a master ordinance that where all of the projects will be housed. There is the addition of authorizing the county manager to make certain transfers within an element. So if money is appropriated for parks projects, she will now have the authority to be able to move money within that parks, and for any parks-related project. If one finishes up and there's a little bit left over, and as you'll see as I walk through the next item, you'll get to your point where we close a project, we have a little residual. It's very hard to track it, hard to find it. We have to come back to you to move it anywhere else. And now you'll delegate the authority to, for those kind of movements to the county manager to be able to make so that projects can continue to move timely and not have to come back to the board for those little cleanup type items. So the next two items do, first, it is a correction to a CPO that we had made that needs to be corrected again, and really gets to very much the point of the challenge that we have in managing 15 different capital project ordinances on 65 different projects. Funding, when we adopted the 22 PAYGO, there were 4 projects identified as airport projects. One of them was Liberty Street land acquisition. Well, long story short, as it turned out, that was not an airport project. That was for the co-located schools county maintenance facility. It got moved from the 22 PAYGO to the airport CPO, where it should not be. It should have been in the 2020 PAYGO. So this one item makes that one correction, just moves it from the airport to the 2020 PAYGO, where it will subsequently be closed in the next item. But just one little cleanup before we move on with closing and consolidating everything. So item, is it 6?
Yes, ma'am.
This
six.
is where we are actually looking to close the existing 15 different capital project ordinances that we currently have. And we'll be moving funds, if there is an open ongoing project, those funds will move to the new capital projects CPO that you would adopt in item 4. Some projects are being closed, and those residual funds may be left in the capital reserve account of the new CPO. Some are being moved back to the general fund. When you adopted the 25 general fund budget, you had anticipated close to $5 million coming back from CPOs into the general fund. So some of these closings and some of this movement back to the general fund covers that was already anticipated in the general fund. To summarize, as we close these projects out, and again, no project budgets are being changed except for one, and I'll talk about that in a minute. A total of $7.2 million will be moving back to the general fund. This is interest earnings on some of the PAYGO monies that we have put in those funds. Some of it may be earnings on debt service, and interest earnings on debt proceeds carry the same restrictions that the bond proceeds do themselves. So they can be spent on project costs or debt service. So we'll be moving some of those back into either our debt leveling plans or into the general fund if they were non-debt leveling plan debt service that need to be covered. There are some projects that are closing that we are just bringing back the residual to the general fund as a way of supporting our general fund and trying to stabilize our general fund budget. Again, $5 million of that 7.2 was already anticipated in your fiscal 25 general fund budget. So an additional 2.2 really is what's coming in to provide that additional support to the general fund.
So what is in the budget stuff so far? That was the part that was confusing to me. So the total amount in consolidating all these, you've taken various things, interest, piece, whatever, it's $7.2 million. That's $7.2 million. Does that show up anywhere where does it show up in sort of the receipts anticipated for FY '26?
It is in there as a transfer from capital project funds. So it'll be from a transfer from other funds. And there were 2 different line items that made up that total. And again, it was just under $5 million.
Okay, and so the 2.2 is going,
That will come back in just as a transfer from these closed CPOs.
it's not in the
It is not.
materials that you have shared, that 2.2.
It is just being brought back, and it'll come in as a revenue into the general fund, and it'll just drop straight to fund balance.
Got it.
So the items that we're closing, each one I did put a little description of where the transfers were going, where they were coming from, to show if monies were going back to the general fund, what that was coming from, or if it was going on to the new CPO, what projects it would be supporting. I don't know if you have, the one I wanted to point out was the Tanglewood Business Park. We had approved and received a loan proceeds of $447,000 more than was ever appropriated. I think that was just an oversight that we didn't bring the budget back at that time to be amended. So this action will actually appropriate that additional loan proceeds in addition to the interest that's been earned in that fund. I am recommending going ahead and putting that in the project fund. No additional spending will occur on that project until you approve some contracts or the next moves that we are to make there. But the budget at least is already amended to provide that funding whenever those decisions to move forward are made. The final part P is actually an amendment to the CPO that you'd be adopting in item 4 to receive all of these residual proceeds from the CPOs that we're closing. In addition, it may include some intergovernmental revenue that we need to reestablish into the budgets of these projects. So if there was appropriated intergovernmental revenues hadn't been received yet, but we still anticipate those being received, then the new project budget, or the project budget under this new ordinance will look identical to the one we closed. If there's no cash there, though, we don't actually physically move anything. So that's why the amendment in the new one will be at a higher amount than what you're seeing close out from the previous one. And you'll see also on the amendment to the new CPO, the new elements that these projects will be categorized under, either county buildings, parks, sheriff, community and economic development, airport, library, technology, sustainability.
Where is that list, by the way?
That is the very last page on Part P, Item P. And it is the amendment to the new CPO to receive the residual transfers from the closed CPOs, and then to reappropriate the project funding.
See it here, it's coming up. Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, I got it.
So again, in summary, no real project should change other than the business park having some additional funding, but nothing's been approved for that project. The ongoing projects that we have will just be housed under this new ordinance. And just from an administrative, accounting, and budgeting standpoint, make it much easier to track and report. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, questions for Terry.
Thank you. I do want to publicly thank Kimberly and Terry, because this has been a lot of cleanup work. I know it sounds complicated because it is complicated, but on the accounting side, this will make it easier for us to track, monitor, and even report back to you. So thank you for that. Agenda item number 7 is a resolution authorizing execution of 2 grant agreements between Forsyth County and the North Carolina Department of Transportation to fund airfield lighting and signage at Smith Reynolds Airport. Mark Davidson, our airport director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon. As she just mentioned, Smith Reynolds Airport is in need of new airfield lighting and signage, and the FAA as well as the NCDOT has allocated funds for the project. The existing 525 lights and 114 signs have been a maintenance nightmare, and the new system will be more efficient with LED fixtures. If you recall, the county's already allocated or approved, or not allocated, but already approved a construction contract with RG Tenney Electric, and the NCDOT has issued 2 grants, because we're a block grant state, for 90% of the construction for the exact dollar amount of the construction bid, which was $5,223,441. The state block grant, which is funded by the FAA discretionary funding, equates to $3,944,241, and the state aid to airport grant is $756,856. So what I'm asking today is for you to consider on Thursday approving those 2 grants, but also want to give you a heads up that what is also going to come in a few weeks is the NCDOT is performing an independent fee estimate for construction admin and material testing, because we just can't set loose RG Tenney out on the airfield. We have to have inspectors and all that kind of stuff. So ABCON is given us a proposal, and they're going to, the NCDOT is going to issue some additional grant amendments to increase the funding. And I think Chairman Martin, you received a letter from the state award letter with more funding. And once I get that, I'll bring that back to you for approval of the 2 grant amendments. So that's that agenda item.
Questions for Mark?
Just so that I'm clear, these will be grants coming into the airport fund, and the appropriations will be coming out of the airport fund?
I'm sorry. There's 2 grants, one from the FAA, one from the NCOT. They pay 90% of the project. We, the county, have to come up with the other 10%. It's all in our CPO. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yep. I think we're good. Harry? Good? All right.
All right. Agenda items 8 and 9 are Mark's as well. 8 is a resolution authorizing execution of a second amendment to the second consolidated and restated lease agreement with Signature Flight Support, LLC, for full-service fixed-base operation at Smith Reynolds Airport.
All right. So the current second consolidated and reinstated lease agreement between Forsyth County and Signature was executed back in April 1st, 2024. In the agreement, we both agreed that the deadline to design and construct a new fuel farm that was been there since 1976 underground would be done. It's actually located in the runway object-free area next to runway 1533. Signature must invest a minimum of $5 million, and the current deadline is the end of this year, and we're not going to make it. Determine the best location for the new fuel farm. We worked with Signature. We also solicited input from our airport board, as well as the North Carolina Department of Transportation, the environmental manager in Raleigh. So the new proposed location is between North State Aviation and Piedmont Propulsion. And what this will do will allow, if you can see right here, it's going to allow the transport trucks that bring the fuel to aircraft or the airport won't have to get on the air side, and the refuelers that go up to the aircraft don't have to get on the land side. So we can separate the two. And there's a little, if you can see here, this is there's already some existing tanks there. So this will be where the $5 million project will go. Since it's taken longer than expected for the site selection, recommend amendment to the current lease to extend the deadline to May 31st, 2027 for the installation of the new fuel farm.
Okay, questions for Mark? Can you talk a little bit about the second page?
I forgot about the second page. So this is zooming in on that area. You can see those existing tanks right here. And then we're talking about building some additional new tanks, Signature would invest $5 million. So the trucks that are bringing the fuel would be on the land side and would offload the fuel at this location. And then refueling trucks would come up and then be able to get fuel from the air side, from the ramp. That's right there north of North State Aviation. It's outside of the leasehold, though.
I think I got it. Questions for Mark?
Agenda item number 9 is a resolution awarding an advanced air mobility consulting and planning master service agreement at the airport.
All righty. The Federal Aviation Administration, North Carolina Department of Transportation encourages airport operators to have agreements with airport consulting and planning firms based on qualifications and not cost. In order to react quickly to future advanced air mobility grants and project opportunities, the county prepared and advertised a request for qualifications. The staff also worked extensively with Darren Redfield and City County Purchasing to advertise the opportunity. The RFQ was advertised to the public, and the county received 4 proposals. The responding firms included Sepper Sky LLC, Infrastructure Consulting and Engineering, LLC, VHB Engineering, and Hanson Professional Services. The selection criteria outlined in the RFQ included familiarity with advanced air mobility industry and the infrastructure required at airports, capability to perform, experience level, NCDOT pre-qualification code 141, which is actually multimodal transportation planning, their current workload and ability to meet future DBE goals and insurance minimums. Based on the criteria, the evaluation committee, which included individuals from the airport, as well as the General Services Department, the committee selected Hanson as the best qualified bidder for advanced air mobility consulting and planning master service and for a planning master service agreement at Smith Reynolds Airport for a period of 5 years. Just real quick, what happened was the state issued out, I brought it to you back in November. I asked for permission to apply for a grant. And in that grant, they wanted the engineering firm that we would have already secured, pre-qualified at the state level. They would just, I had 3-4 weeks to apply for this grant. And so this way, this will position us better in the future. And then also, there might be some other opportunities, and so I think this is a good way to go.
Okay, can you distinguish between Avcon and what this particular Hanson's going to be?
Yeah, Avcon doesn't have the experience when we put out on the street this RFQ. This group does kind of compete with Avcon for master service planning or airport master planning, along with some of those other firms. So we put it out on the street. Avcon didn't put in for it. So that's.
So they are going to be doing what Avcon has been doing. They're going to be, because Avcon will, whenever
But in
this term begins, Avcon's ended.
No. Avcon will still continue to, we have a 5-year master service agreement with them, and they still help us with planning and construction phase services. This is an additional agreement for advanced air mobility planning, not all our other kind of stuff. They can do that kind of stuff, but it's more for, they have experience at other airports for advanced air mobility. And so that's what I wanted, was some firm to go out on the street and solicit for qualifications. So Avcon did not put in for this one, and we were selecting, or we would like to select Hanson for agreement.
When will Avcon's contract run out?
I think they run till 2.5 years, 2 more years.
It'd be nice to get all that under a single contractor and have both together, so you're not dealing with 2 different vendors for.
I thought you would say they would want a lot more diversity and a lot more vendors. I'm surprised you said that.
No, you want, but I'm not, it seems to me from you still get a lot of, you want vendors who can, seems to me you'd want a full-service vendor that can do both of these things.
Yeah.
It looks to me like. And then you would look for it that way and hopefully get, highly qualified folks.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it suggests that Avcon, and maybe Avcon is cheaper on the services, that if Hanson were bidding on those same services, maybe that, and if that's the case, I'm in favor of the 2.
Okay.
But it seems to me that'd be nice to know that was true.
Yeah, and I believe Hanson is going to try to partner with Avcon so they don't have to reinvent the wheel and know our infrastructure and planning services and things like that. So
Yeah,
I think there's going to be some synergy.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks. Other questions?
Yeah, and this is kind of confusing. It's like I said, the NCDOT and the FAA wants us to do it based on qualifications. I'm not entering in any contract with them except for the master service, but I can use whoever we want to use for any sort of project. This is sort of, we've gone through the exercise of selecting a consulting firm, but I'm going to bring task orders back to you if they qualify for a certain dollar amount. And the state will still do their independent fee estimates. So this is more of a master service agreement to be able to use them in instances. Does that make sense?
To use them in a short period of time. When you have a short lead time for a grant proposal or for this, that, and the other, or to meet a deadline, you have somebody in place that is pre-qualified that can do all this stuff.
Right. But let me just go back to Avcon as a good example. If there's a master plan for the air, even this airfield lighting I just brought up, the state does a independent fee estimate. I bring to you, not because we already have a master service agreement, but I still bring to you a contract for that task. So if it's $800,000 to do construction phase services, I still bring that to you. I can't just use the master service agreement I have with them. That sort of, allows us, because the state wants us to have that and the FAA wants us to have it with professionals based on qualifications and not price. That's why we get the state, once they fill out how much it's going to cost for that project, we have the state do an independent fee estimate, because the state don't want to get ripped off, and we don't want to either. That makes sense. It's a little different from a lot of the departments here at the county. Does that make sense? We can talk about it another time. I'm meeting up this meeting.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Agenda item number 10 is a resolution authorizing a purchase order with Brooks Network Services LLC for camera equipment and services. Jason Ring, our IT technology manager, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to come forward today to present to you a solution to replace our camera system over at the parking deck. That was installed, I believe, back in 2020. We are replacing it with a Verkada solution that integrates with the existing solution that's in the new courthouse. And we advertised that from close to a month, from April 3rd through May 1st through City County Purchasing. We received 3 bids, and we recommend awarding the purchase order to the lowest bidder, which is Brooks Network Services.
Good.
Any questions?
Any questions for Jason?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
So I do want to, and thank you for updating us on this. I did, before you came up, kind of look at where these companies are located. Although these bids are far below what is mandated by the state as non-competitive, so then the lowest bid would not be a factor because how low, but of course we do have local policy that we want the lowest bid. And my concern is two. One, the lowest bid doesn't necessarily mean quality as it relates to the product and the service, and I think based on some of our current maintenance issues, that concern has been raised. And I think two, I think that anytime that we have businesses that are more local to Forsyth County, I think that we should be very mindful of saving $20 at the expense, and I'm just using this as an example, saving $20 at the expense of a local business that pay into our tax base for revenue. And so I hope that the county commissioners can really revisit the policy around the lowest bid as our policy to award contracts when we have local businesses that could benefit from our community. But it looks like the company that you awarded is from Gibsonville. There was that's the lowest. Then Brady, which was the highest, is from Greensboro. It looks like, yeah. So I think at least all three are at least North Carolina, and we're not competing with an outside state. Thank
And
you.
we actually turned, these are the only 3 bids we received. We didn't exclude anybody on the bid, so, and we had it open for a month, so we definitely had plenty of opportunity, I think, for bids. So thank you.
And I would just point out, this is a purchase of cameras, so it's equipment. It's not really subject to the MWBE requirements.
Yep.
Thank you. My question may be for the county manager, actually. This reminded me of another relatively small capital project that relates to the detention center that we recently discussed. As I recall, we had to apply the funding that had originally been intended for cameras to upgrading the electrical system so that it would be in position to support the cameras. Is that correct?
Correct. So in one of the pay-goes, I can't remember one year, it was approved for cameras for the detention center. However, they did not have the infrastructure to support the cameras. And actually, Jason can probably speak to that because their team is the ones working on that. And then our goal would be to then try to bring back the cameras in 2027 but they can't do it without the infrastructure first.
I guess my question really relates to the total amounts involved. I don't recall what the rough cost of the detention center camera installment would be. Is this in the ballpark, or is it much lower?
Much lower.
Much lower.
But for the parking deck, we're going to be able to use the existing electrical system, so to speak, or the switches that they call it. We won't have to replace those. We'll just be replacing the cameras, so we don't have to do an infrastructure upgrade at the parking deck. But over at the LEDC, we will have to upgrade the infrastructure, which pushes it close, I think, to $1.2 million.
Yeah, it's
I think.
over $1 million, and the cameras are also about the same because they have a substantial amount of cameras.
Yes.
Okay. And the reason I brought that up in this context is I'm thinking in terms of where is there capital money that might be available to bump that up, since it's clearly a safety priority. But this isn't in the ballpark to do it, so thank you.
In this particular case, where we're going to be installing 47 cameras, I think over in the LEDC, it'll be pushing somewhere around 300, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 11 is a resolution awarding contracts for in-home aid services for the Department of Social Services. Teray Stafford, our social work program manager, will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Chairman Martin, Commissioners, County Manager Robinson. The Forsyth County Department of Social Services, more specifically the Adult Services Division, is presenting this item requesting approval to contract with 6 licensed home health agencies in the effort to provide in-home aid services to our elderly and disabled clients for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, using home and community block grant funding. The 6 agencies recommended for approval were evaluated by a scoring panel, and when we reviewed their proposals, it was determined that all 6 agencies adequately met the requirements outlined in the request for a proposal and will be needed to meet the need for our services during the 2026 fiscal year. Based on the request for proposals, the home health agencies which are being recommended have confirmed a capacity to serve a minimum number of clients. And based on the minimum number that they're confirming that they can serve, our agency believes that the unit of service and the rates will be able to be contained within our current budget. Additionally, the approval of the 6 agencies will allow for us to address a massive waiting list, which at this point exceeds 650 customers. And also, what we want to be proactive about is, in the event an agency decides to terminate their contract, we will have enough vendors in place to continue services. And we did experience that this fiscal year. One agency decided to terminate before the end of this year. And so we were able to do it, but it was a challenge moving those clients to current vendors. Thank you. Any questions?
I've got a quick question.
Sure.
Because the unit rates, I understand exactly what you did.
Yes.
Now you got 6 folks you can do business with, but the difference between the lowest rate and the highest rate is about 50%. I mean, higher.
Yes.
So operationally, do you go, I mean, do they have different, are there different specialties that you go to one over the other, or do you go with the cheapest one until they say, we can't do any more, we've reached our capacity, that's our limit, and then you go to the, I'm trying to decide, how do you deploy, how do you get to,
Yes.
when do you pick them, and how do you keep from having everything go to the most expensive one?
If I can add to that question, it was as to what is the credentialing of the service personnel? Are we talking CNA 1, CNA 2, higher level care? Go ahead.
Okay, may I answer that first? So the professionals that are providing the service are known as paraprofessionals. So they are not certified nurses assistants. They are home care aides, although the agencies do use some certified nurses assistants. That's not a requirement that they have to employ CNAs. To your question, Commissioner Martin, one of the things that has been challenging industry-wide is attracting and retaining staff. And so one of the things that the agencies have come to us to say is they do have to make their wages competitive with non-healthcare agencies. So what we have done is we have utilized agencies with lower rates, and when they reach capacity, then we have to look to the agencies with a little higher rate, because they have been able to really sustain the majority of the clients that are being served right now.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying, it's very likely that the first 2 vendors, the lowest unit rates, will likely cover your demands for the year. But if they couldn't, or if as you said, say one of them cancels their contract, you have number 3 to go to and whatever else. So
absolutely,
I got it. So you're managing the best you can to mileage, dollars, and those kind of things.
Yes, and they're all providing the same scope of services. That was one of your earlier questions. So they're all going to provide the same level of service to all clients contractually.
Got it. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 12 is a resolution authorizing an extension to the agreement with Waste Management of Carolinas, Inc. for operation of Forsyth County's 3 recycling convenience center. Minor Barnett, our EAP director, will brief this item.
Good afternoon. I'm here to talk to you today about the need to extend the agreement that we have with Waste Management of Carolinas Incorporated to continue operating our 3 recycling convenience centers where citizens can drop off recyclable commodities from their homes for an additional 2 years, because the current agreement, or the initial term of the current agreement, ends at the end of June, coming up in a couple of months, next month. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly and not dwell on these details, but I have prepared some information demonstrating the number of households in the unincorporated area who choose to use the available subscription curbside collection service, and also the amount of material being collected through that service and being dropped off at the 3 recycling convenience centers. There are at least 15 household commodities that are banned from landfill disposal, and in my opinion, it's important to continue providing opportunities for our citizens to be able to recycle some of these items that do not need to go in the landfill under North Carolina statute. We have 3 recycling convenience centers. We've had these 3 for a long, long time. One is on Lindsay Street in Kernersville, which is the red dot on the eastern side. We have one at the Haynes Mill Road Solid Waste Facility in northern Winston-Salem, and the third one is on Yadkinville Road beside the Vienna Fire Department on property that's owned by the fire department. This is a picture of the facility in Kernersville. It's the only one that has a rain shelter so that people can pull in and drop things off when it's raining without having to get out in the rain. That shelter is a really convenient feature to have, and we lease this site from the town of Kernersville. This is the Pofftown site on the property that we lease from the Vienna Fire Department. It's the smallest as far as area or footprint. It's the smallest of the 3 facilities, and that's what it looks like from Yadkinville Road. And this is not a view of the entire site at Haynes Mill Road. It's a view of the attendant shelter, which is a small building, and then the compactor with a 40 cubic yard receiver. This is the only convenience center of the 3 that does have a compactor, and we paid for a lot of the cost of that compactor with some state grant money a few years ago, and it's worked out really well, and it's made the operation a lot more efficient. So our convenience centers were operated under a 10-year contract from 2012 to 2022. That was a contract between Waste Management and the city of Winston-Salem. And during that time, the county reimbursed the city for the operating cost. And there was a lot of administrative effort that went into managing that contract for those 10 years. And while we look forward to that contract ending in 2022 to relieve us of some of the administrative effort that was required to manage it, what we did not anticipate until 2022 arrived was the significant cost increase that we would be facing under a new contractual agreement. So when we distributed or advertised a request for proposals for the operation of these 3 recycling convenience centers, Waste Management, the previous and current operator, was the only company that responded to that RFP and demonstrated any interest in helping us operate these 3 centers. So without getting too deep into the details of this slide, as you can see, the cost has gone up significantly for the hourly rate we are charged for the site attendants that operate the facilities. It's important for someone to be at each of these sites in person when they're open to receive materials to prevent contamination and other undesirable outcomes that we have experienced in the past at one site when it didn't have an attendant. From 2012 through 2022, we paid a flat rate for servicing the big roll-off boxes at the 3 sites. We paid the same rate at each of the 3 sites. Each time one of those large containers was removed from the convenience center and taken to the material recovery facility to be emptied and brought back to continue use. So now we pay different rates for each of the 3 sites based on their geographic location, their distance from the materials recovery facility, and the amount of time it takes to complete one of those service cycles for each box. So what I'm asking you to consider this afternoon is an extension of this agreement to add an additional 2-year term. This is consistent with the language in the agreement. It's subject to board action, and the anticipated cost for fiscal year 26 is not to exceed $394,000, and the anticipated cost for the following fiscal year ending in June 2027 is not to exceed $419,000. Be happy to share any additional details that you might be interested in, but at this point I will stop to see if you have any questions.
Quickly, could you go back, the anticipated cost this year, is my memory right, was it like 357, 342, is that right?
Correct.
So your projected 342, and it's going up by 50 grand?
Correct.
In 1 year?
Yes.
And with obviously our tonnage has remained pretty stable. I mean, our tonnage that we're recycling is about the same. I mean, it's been, you have that in an earlier slide.
I do. Something I didn't mention is in the existing contract, there is a consumer price index adjustment that's applied once a year. And the not to exceed amount for next year of $394,000 is based on our best estimate of what we think that CPI impact will be. So since you brought up the idea of the tonnages, I will mention that we've been disappointed in the amount of material that has been delivered to our 3 convenience centers. And over time over the last 4 years, it's been tapering off pretty significantly. And overall, it doesn't appear to be offset by increased participation in the curbside service. It looks like we're between the curbside collection service and the 3 convenience centers, we are simply diverting fewer tons per year away from landfill disposal now than we have been over the last 6 years. I'm not sure what is driving that. I know anytime one of the convenience centers is closed for any reason when it's normally open, we get a lot of phone calls. You know, I think the people that want to recycle think it's very important, and they don't hesitate to call us to see why one of the facilities might be closed during a weather event or another scenario where it's closed when they would normally expect it to be open. But the tonnage that's being delivered to us is not increasing, it appears to be decreasing.
Other questions?
So for our curbside collections, I'm assuming that takes away things like, container plastics and aluminum cans, but not the large items like white goods and electronics. Is that correct?
That is correct. The white goods can be dropped off for free at the Haynes Mill Road Solid Waste Facility. There's a designated area for that. And the electronics from residential sources or residences can be dropped off for free at the 3RC Enviro Station on Martin Luther King Drive, where it's our permanent household hazardous waste facility that operated under a contract with the Utilities Commission. But the curbside collection of recyclables would include the normal recycling stream coming out of a residence that can fit into that cart that's the size of a trash can or a large, 96-gallon rolling cart. So that would include plastic bottles and containers with resin ID codes 1, 2, and 5, aluminum cans, steel and metal cans, glass bottles, mixed paper, newspaper, and cardboard.
And the contract with Waste Management, does that include operation of the centers only, or does it include the cost of taking the material and dealing with it in their facilities?
It includes all of that.
Okay.
They have an attendant that will unlock the gate at each facility every morning when it opens and monitor the activities as people visit the facility. That attendant is also responsible to call someone and tell them when one of the large roll-off boxes is getting full and needs to be emptied or collected, transported, and emptied at the material recovery facility. And then Waste Management processes all that material at a facility that they own here in Forsyth County, down off Union Cross Road, and sort the materials to prepare them to be sold for reuse, typically as manufacturing feedstock. But they bring the empty containers back, and we monitor this pretty closely. You know, we try to encourage them a lot, frequently, to fill up one box before they start using another box for the same part of the waste stream. If they don't do that, the boxes tend to all get full at the same time, and then there's nowhere to put anything. So if they can rotate the use by keeping an empty box closed while another box is being used until it gets close to capacity, it's a lot more efficient operation, and we communicate with them a lot about that. And, you know, maybe a year ago or a little more, we installed cameras at all 3 facilities, and those cameras have been extremely useful. Our friends in the MIS department gave us really good advice on what types of cameras we need, and they're working really well for us. And they've been more beneficial than we anticipated. It gives us the ability to monitor what's going on at these 3 facilities from our computers at our desk without having to send somebody out to, you know, visit a site in person to verify what the operating conditions are. And we keep a close eye on them using those cameras.
So, my working assumption is that you looked at the potential costs of staffing the centers with our own personnel and only contracting with Waste Management to haul the material away, and that's just not cost effective. That it's more cost effective to have Waste Management handle the whole operation. Or have you?
We have not performed a detailed study on that. You know, we pretty much segued in 2022 from the same operating conditions in terms of the previous contract that had been in place for 10 years into the next term of the new agreement with new pricing.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like you're pretty much stuck with doing an extension at this point. I don't know whether a 1-year extension would be an option, and study the question of whether it would be more efficient to actually operate the collection centers ourselves and only contract for the haul-off. And the reason I ask is because several years ago, the city of Winston-Salem had been contracting with Waste Management for the curbside collection as well as the taking materials, and it returned to a system in which the city hired personnel, did the collection, and the only costs that were contracted with Waste Management were dealing with the waste or dealing with the materials that were collected, both out of quality of service issues, reliability, and costs. And I don't have a good sense for whether it would be worth trying to study that question on an accelerated basis and say doing a 1-year extension or not.
So,
any sense on that?
In the language of the contract that we're discussing, the agreement, it specifies an extension of 2 years after June 30th of 2025. but there's also language that allows us or Waste Management to make a change in this agreement or even terminate it with 90 days notice without cause. So we still would have the flexibility with the 2-year extension of cutting it short if we wanted to, if we saw a better, more efficient way we can operate these facilities.
Well, that would probably be a good thing to do, would be my suggestion. One of the problems with the city of Winston-Salem contract with Waste Management is that, the rates were going way up. And that was the point that the city determined that it was just going to take the collection back. A much smaller contract, of course, but still the rates here are going way up. So,
right.
I'd suggest that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are the rules aren't different at what's recycled in the centers versus what goes in the curbside of what's recycled? I mean, part of what I'm getting at is I heard you mention steel cans and that could be put into the bin, the curbside, but I didn't think you put steel cans in the stuff in the centers. Am I not right about that? It's a little detail, minor.
Yeah, at the 3 convenience centers, we do accept steel and bimetal cans, the types of cans that typically fruits and vegetables come in from the grocery store.
Thank you. Just a little personal information there.
Sure.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
I have a garbage question for you, too. If the volume of curbside disposal is static and there has been a decrease in contributions to these convenience centers, where did the missing percentage go?
The appropriate place for the missing percentage would be for it to be going into the landfill. If I'm understanding your question correctly.
Could it be a function of changes in the technology for different types of disposals that wouldn't have to be recycled or dumped? In other words, could it be a change in the constitution of the product itself? That's a question, not an observation.
You mean changes in the types of packaging that are consumable?
Yes, sir.
Products?
I mean, they're doing that in Europe.
I try to follow this pretty closely, and I'm not aware of, in the long term, we've, the last few decades, we've seen a major shift away from glass and towards increased use of plastics for a lot of commodities.
Right now, they're moving away from plastics in other parts of the planet.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is probably a good idea too.
Yes.
But I probably don't need to hear everything I think about that. But anyway, are there any further questions about this proposed 2-year extension?
Well, I think perhaps Commissioner Wilson's suggesting that we perhaps at least study if there's anything that could be done more efficiently, taking both Commissioner Bessie's and as well as Commissioner Wilson's comments. And if we find something better, we have 90 days that we can cancel without cause, notice. So I'm fine with 2 years, and we ought to be pursuing whatever we can to make it cheaper if we can.
Well,
Agenda item number 13 is minors as well. It's an amendment to the franchise ordinance agreement for residential and small business solid waste collection, transportation and disposal services, and optional recycling services in unincorporated areas of Forsyth County.
thank you. And once again, the formatting has changed from the time I saved this to the time I've reopened it. We've seen that happen before. Since 1973, Forsyth County has regulated or governed household residential solid waste collection service, curbside collection service in the county under a franchise ordinance and agreement. We currently have 3 franchise holders, and they have assigned service areas that we try to protect to ensure no one else is providing services for hire in those areas. And historically, this board has always controlled the rates that they charge for those collection services. For the current agreement, it was approved in 2018 and went into effect the beginning of 2019 with an initial term of 3 years, an initial base rate of $14.57 per month, and that's for once a week collection of household solid waste at the end of the driveway for most people. The first 2-year extension of the term was for 2022 and 2023. The second extension was for 2024 and the current year, so the second and final term of this agreement will end at the end of December of this year. Once since 2019, under this agreement, we had a small adjustment to the base rate to offset a tipping fee increase at the landfill, and that was in the fall of 2022, and that adjustment was 9 cents on the base rate. That's based on the amount of material that they're actually paying to dispose of. We have a record number of households, more than any in the history of the franchise, participating in this collection service or choosing to subscribe for this service. Over 19,000 households out of approximately 28,000 total, so that's about 68% participation, most we've ever seen. We have pretty modest participation in the optional recycling collection service. We don't control the rate that they charge for recycling service, but they're required to make that service available to their customers that would choose to subscribe for that service. Actual volume collected is about 1,600 pounds per year, or 81% of 8.81 tons per household. That's a little bit less than the state and national average for waste generation in a residential household. So the base rate that they're billing for this service has not increased since 2012, except for 4 modest adjustments when the tipping fee at the landfill has gone up on 4 different occasions. And like I mentioned, only one of those small adjustments was during the current term of the agreement since 2019. So we're currently at $14.66 per month for weekly collection service, and that's subject to adjustment quarterly based on the cost of diesel fuel and our fuel surcharge. This slide illustrates a brief history of the Consumer Price Index for garbage and trash collection service from 2011 to now. And in the last few years, their cost of doing business has gone up significantly, and we've actually been talking about the need for a rate increase for several years. And since the 2022 adjustment for that to offset that tipping fee, there have been 3 additional increases in the tipping fee since then, one of which will go into effect July 1st in 2 months. If we look at the 5-year CPI impact for 2015 or 2011 to 2025, that's mislabeled. Let me start over. So if we look at the 15-year impact of the CPI on this collection service cost of doing business, it's 63%. If we look at the 10-year CPI impact, it's 47%. And if we look at the last 5 years, it's 28%. So as their costs have continued to increase, the rates that they bill have remained constant. So what I'm here to seek your consideration of is an increase of $2.66 per month, which is 61 cents per week, to adjust the base rate from $14.66 to $17.32 a month. So each time the garbage truck stops at the end of the driveway on the weekday to empty the collect the household solid waste. The increase would be 61 cents per week or per service stop. I don't have a lot of confidence that the service providers are going to be excited about this. I'm probably going to have a lot of discussions with them about their potential disappointment in this rate adjustment being a lot less than they think would be justified based on their increased cost. But this is what I'm asking you to consider.
If they ask you where you came up with that number, what would you answer?
I applied the consumer price index for the last 3 years to the existing base rate to calculate this as a partial offset of the impact of inflation on their cost of doing business. Those last 3 years, the CPI has been 7%, 6.4%, 3.8%. And I would probably be recommending a larger increase if we weren't at a point in time where we only have 2 quarters of operation, 2 calendar quarters of operation that this will apply to. And that will be the quarter starting July 1st and the quarter starting October 1st. And I would recommend that you anticipate further discussion as we get later into the year about what we're going to do starting January 1st of 2026 after the current term of this agreement has ended.
Any questions for Minor? All righty, thank you.
Agenda item number 14 is a resolution authorizing execution of a second amendment to the lease agreement with ARCA for county-owned real property located at 5755 Chatelain Drive. Chelsea Swain from General Services will brief this item.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Board. This item is to approve a second lease amendment with Addiction Recovery Care Association for the Springwood facility. This amendment would adjust the ground maintenance responsibilities such that the landlord, the county, would assume a portion of the responsibilities, which would include mowing, leaf removal, and snow removal. The tenant would continue to maintain the courtyard area as well as the parking lot maintenance and any landscaped areas with shrubbery. The tenant would reimburse us for our labor and services at a rate of $34.48 an hour, and then annually we would adjust that rate based on the CPI, and all other terms of the agreement would remain the same. And we're bringing this before you at the request of ARCA, so happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Thank you.
I think we're good, thank you.
Agenda items 15 and 16 are our reports. 15 is the March HR report, and 16 is the ARPA status report. And that's all of our agenda items, Mr. Chair. I just have a closed session motion.
That's good.
Yeah, I have a few comments.
Mr. McDaniel mentioned she wanted to add a comment.
Sure, I have a few comments I'd like to share. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Vice Chair, for meeting with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board members relative to their financial situations. And I wanted to say thank you to our county manager, Chantel Robinson, for the summary. And I want to be mindful and use some grace around my comments today, but I wanted to address how torn this community is regarding the broken trust. The school board is ultimately responsible, and the superintendent is liable not to follow federal, state, and local mandates. It's financially irresponsible, and as we are working to be good stewards, I needed the community to know, I believe in transparency, that we are trying to help the school systems. We've provided prepayment for the month of May and June in advance to their financial woes. I'm looking for a plan that would show, and I appreciate Hill Consultants providing their summaries to us as well. I'm not sure if the other commissioners have been able to read this. And my comments are from Commissioner Tanya McDaniel. They are not relative to this board. So I just wanted to make sure that individuals know that these are my comments, and that I needed a plan that was shown I want to be in the weeds with that plan. I want that plan uploaded on their website showing, for example, if you mitigated 81 jobs, I need to know those job titles and the salaries. That's how in the weeds I want to be. Relative to the state, I'm asking that the state support repayment conditions with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board. And I'm also asking for the presence of the superintendent, the board chair, Hill Consultants to come with that plan of action. Thank you for allowing me to share.
All righty. Motion for adjournment should be,
Okay.
I mean, not for adjournment, for a closed session.
Thank you. I need to ask the board to consider a motion to go into closed session to discuss a matter to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of employment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee pursuant to the provisions of North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A6. And since there's no other business to come before the board at this meeting, following the closed session, the meeting will be adjourned.
So move. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. We will go into closed session and then be adjourned.